Hello everyone, welcome to our series on configuring GitHub Desktop for Unity. Today, we'll be going through a problem that teams usually run into when collaborating on GitHub Desktop, the dreaded merge conflict. In this video, we'll explain how merge conflicts happen, how you can resolve merge conflicts if they pop up, and how you can prevent merge conflicts from even popping up in the first place. So, what are merge conflicts and why do you need to fear them? To start off, let's briefly go through how GitHub does its version control magic. When you are working on a GitHub project, all of the changes made to the project are arranged in a linear manner. This just means that changes are applied one after the other, and you can see this when you go into GitHub Desktop's History tab where the most recent change is first on the list. Hence, when you commit and push your changes onto GitHub, Git will try and add your changes to the end of this chain. Since GitHub manages changes in a linear way, you may encounter scenarios where GitHub needs to decide which change goes first. For example, you may have forgotten to fetch origin before starting work on a project, or maybe someone was in the project with you and they pushed their changes before yours. In both scenarios, whenever you try and commit your changes, Git will first fetch these changes made before and prompt you to pull these changes into your repository. Git will put these incoming changes before your own, which means that their changes will be applied first, and then once they're applied, your changes will be applied next. If it turns out that in these changes, you and the other person modified the same file, Git will try and automatically merge those changes together so that the file keeps both you and the other person's edits. However, what would happen though if Git were unable to merge these files together for some reason? For example, in some stroke of coincidence, you and some other person decide to write a function with the same name, but code it differently. If this happens, Git will be unable to merge these changes as both of these changes modify the same section. It's basically telling us that it does not know whether to keep our changes, their changes, or keep a mix of both of these changes, and that it needs our help in deciding which of these changes to keep and which of these changes to discard. When Git is unable to automatically merge files like these, it's known as a merge conflict, and it lets us know by adding conflict markers into the file to outline which areas in the file are conflicting with each other. These markers though also break the file and prevent it from running. For example, if you open up a scene file that has a merge conflict in it, you'll notice that the scene is completely empty except for the skybox, and that the console window shows you a little error that tells you to fix the merge conflict in an editor. So, how do we fix merge conflicts and get our files back on track? Simple, we have to remove the conflict markers. To demonstrate the different merge conflicts across files, I'll be replicating a merge conflict with a script, a prefab, and a scene file. Alright, so I've just made some minor changes to these three files, I'm going to commit them, and I'm going to push them to origin. Oh, what's this? Oh, okay, I think I might have forgotten to fetch origin before starting my work, so I guess I'll need to pull these files into my project. Okay, let's just hope the changes will be able to merge correctly. Oh, there. Wait, never mind. And yes, for some reason at the start, GitHub tells you that all conflicts have been resolved, but don't get your hopes too high up. Anyway, now that we've gotten these errors, let's go through them one by one. Let's go through the easiest to fix first, which are script merge conflicts. Now to fix script merge conflicts, you'll need to go back into Unity and open up the conflicting file in Visual Studio. Once you're in Visual Studio, you'll notice that there's a bar on top prompting you to open up the file in the Merge Editor. Click the Open Merge Editor button to open it up. Once you open up the Merge Editor, you will be presented with three windows. The two windows up top show you the scripts that need to be merged, and the window down below shows you the results of the merging. What you'll need to do is compare the two scripts on top and choose which lines of code to keep in the final resulting script. You can do this by taking note of the red highlighted areas in the scripts. These red areas show you which lines of code are conflicting with each other, and you will notice that on their sides there is a checkbox that you can tick. Ticking the checkbox keeps these lines in the final script, and you can see it over here when I click this checkbox, it keeps these lines in the result window. You can either tick the boxes on the left, right, or both of the windows depending on which lines of code you'd like to keep. And that's basically all you need to do when dealing with merge conflicts in scripts. It's just a matter of going through both scripts and ticking which lines of code to keep. Once you're done comparing and picking the lines of code, you can check that the code in the results window is what you'd want to merge. Once you're done checking and if everything looks alright, you can click the Accept Merge button on the top to get the merge script, and hopefully your script merge conflict is resolved. If you don't have Visual Studio, you can also open your files in Notepad or any other text editor and remove the conflict markers manually. We recommend you set up Visual Studio though because it is extremely beneficial for Unity development. Alright, now that we've got the script out of the way, let's deal with the prefab and scene conflicts. Now dealing with prefab and scene file merge conflicts are tricky in a similar way. Here's why. You can actually open up a prefab or a scene file using a text editor like Notepad, and when you do, you will notice that there are hundreds if not thousands of lines written in a format known as YAML. These lines of text store information such as components for prefabs and game objects for scenes. Since these files are text-based, you'll be prompted to open up these files in an editor to resolve the conflicts just like what we did for scripts. Like scripts, you'll be able to choose which lines of text to keep and which lines of text to discard. However, I would strongly advise you against manually editing the scripts yourself. For starters, you've seen how many lines of text make up a prefab or a scene file, and going through a lot of lines is really tedious. Not only do you need to go through tons of text, but if you're not careful, you could completely break a scene or prefab if you include the wrong lines or leave certain lines out, because certain lines like game object IDs may be different across projects, and changing them may mess the game object up after the merge. Well then, what can we do to resolve scene and prefab conflicts if we can't edit the files ourselves? You could use Unity's built-in YAML merger, although it is not 100% guaranteed to properly merge any scenes or prefabs you have. The other option would be, instead of merging, to just discard one of the files and keep the other. This method of choosing one file to keep and one file to discard also works with scripts and other conflicting files such as scriptable objects. To do this, you'll need to go back onto the merge conflict pop-up and expand the drop-down next to the conflicting file. At the bottom of the drop-down, you'll be presented with two options: use the modified file from main, or use the modified file from origin/main. What you need to remember is that using the modified file from main keeps your set of changes and discards the changes that you pulled from the remote repository. Using the modified file from origin/main instead discards your changes and keeps the changes that you pulled from the remote repository. To illustrate this, let's say I'm talking about the merge conflict with my teammate and we're deciding which files to keep and which files to discard. My teammate says, "Oh, you can keep your changes to the cube, but please keep my changes on the scene because I worked really hard until 3 AM. So, to keep your changes on the cube, we'll use the modified file from main for the cube prefab, and to keep your teammate's changes on the scene, we'll use the modified file from origin/main on the sample scene. Alright, now that we got our merge conflicts resolved, we can press the continue merge button and push our changes to the remote repository. Now there's one more way you can run into merge conflicts, and that happens when one set of changes modifies a file that another set of changes deletes. When that happens, the resolve button will present you with two options. Using the modified file from main basically pushes the file over to the remote repository and recreates it there so that it exists again. Do not include this file on origin/main, instead does not push the file over and discards it instead, keeping the file deleted. Now from this whole section, you can tell that merge conflicts are a headache to deal with and can cause lots of time and progress to be wasted. As they say, prevention is better than cure. So here are some ways you can prevent merge conflicts from happening. One of these steps is actually really simple. You just need to always remember to fetch origin before working on your project. Since merge conflicts are caused by overwriting unupdated files, pressing fetch origin prevents that from happening by checking if there are any changed files and prompting you to pull them into your project. If there are changes, don't forget to press the pull origin button as well because it doesn't do so automatically. Since working on the same file at the same time ends up with someone overwriting an unupdated file when they commit their changes, it's best to have only one person work on one file, and only once they commit their changes can anyone else modify that file. If your teammates need to work on the project at the same time, they should be assigned to work only on specific folders. For example, if one teammate is assigned to do work on the scripts in the UI folder, then no other teammate should modify the files in that folder until that teammate has committed their work and everyone else has pulled their edits to it. The next way to prevent merge conflicts from happening is to make use of branches. Now, although branches are usually only applicable for longer-term development, they are useful in preventing merge conflicts as those working on separate branches are unable to touch each other's code. For example, if you create any scripts, prefabs, or scenes on a branch, they will only be visible and modifiable to those working on that particular branch. You'll still need to be careful with any files that have been carried over, as once you're done working on the branch, you'll need to merge it back into the repository's main branch. This final tip isn't just useful for preventing merge conflicts, but useful as a whole, and that's having good communication with your teammates. You and your teammates can use chat groups like Slack or Discord to coordinate your work and avoid running into merge conflicts. From there, you can inform your teammates about when you're working on the project, tell them about the files you're changing, and if your team is unlucky enough to run into a merge conflict, discuss about what parts of the files you all want to keep or discard. And with that, wraps up our video on merge conflicts. Hopefully, if you clicked on this video while encountering a merge conflict, you were able to see this pop-up at the end. Good luck collaborating, and thanks for watching.